All right. Welcome back to the Unstuck movement. As always, I'm your host, Rob Z. This platform was created for you to have it true, real life examples of breakthrough, for you to know wherever you're stuck at in life, it's possible for you to overcome and possible for you to turn that mess into a message. Today, we have the incredible AmiLynne Carroll with us on the podcast. You can call her Babs. We're going to be talking about surrender, resilience, autonomy, trust, and so much more in this episode. And just to set the stage, so Babs is a stage 4 cancer survivor, also a quadriplegic. And when we set these episodes up, I always ask a couple of questions. And Babs, what you had told me when I asked you, what is a life lesson that had a big impact on you? You had said, my story formed my experience, but it's not my identity. And so I just want to dive into your story and the experience that has been your life. And let's just start there.
Rob, well, one, thank you for having me today. And for your listeners, thank you for showing up for you today, because that's what this conversation is about. It's not about Rob and I just exchanging. Like, you are here for a reason. And so I just want to honor that. Mm-hmm. And so in answering the question, your experiences may have formed your story, but it is not your identity. What that means to me is from the time we are each born, there are a set of circumstances from phase to phase in our life, from season to season, that affect how we grow, how we evolve, how we mature, and how we matriculate, how we move through that stage. And yet it's not our identity. And I think so often in this human experience, which we're all in together, we are taught that our role is our identity. We are taught that our presence is our identity. And by presence, I mean, are you a manager? Are you a supervisor? Are you a daughter? Are you a mother? Are you a brother? Are you a coworker? Are you a student? That presence, that where you're showing up in the world is actually your identity. And it's not. I'm here to tell you with emphatic knowledge and experience in this space that without what happens in our life, we don't get to really see who we are. But what is happening around us is not happening to us. It's not even really happening for us. It's just happening, and we get to choose how to engage with it. And how we choose to engage with it is how we evolve and grow as an individual. We get to make those choices.
You know, I really love this because I love this concept, and I've said it many times. Living it out, way more difficult than just hearing it and understanding. Wow, that's really powerful. Because I mean, everything that is happening is just happening. It's our reaction to it, our attitude towards it, how we respond to those things that gives it meaning. And that is so profound and so true, and also really hard to wrap your head around sometimes. Like, well, okay, so that thing, this seemingly horrible thing is happening, but it's just happening. It's not happening. There's no meaning to it outside of the meaning that I prescribe to it.
Exactly.
And it's such a deep concept. I understand it. How do you actually live in it is the much bigger question, especially in those moments. And we're going to go deep right off the bat. We're just going to go there before we even go more into your story. How do you separate yourself from those things? I can see. Okay, so let me preface that. I can see as time heals all wounds, right? So as time goes by, you can have 20/20 vision on 20/20 vision on something and see it for what it is, and see the value, the blessings in it. But when it's happening in the moment, how can we practically step outside of it to notice we're giving this thing meaning and that we have authority in that?
Rob, it's a really, really great question. And first and foremost, I don't believe that time heals all wounds. We'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
But how do we show up in the moment when something awful is happening? When something really sad, angering, whatever, like we're in those environments every day. And if you're not, good for you. You haven't turned the television on. But in the moment, what I am learning through my own experience is that the work that we do outside of those moments becomes instrumental in how we show up in those moments. For me, I have had to do a lot of self-work to figure out who the heck I am and why the heck I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
And those are big questions. And that the answers to those questions are always evolving. But I can tell you that that moment when I recognize that I am nothing more and nothing less than the expression of love, I am God expressed.
Mm-hmm.
I am here to express God. I am here in a human form to do it in a human way. But that the things that are happening around me, there's a phrase, it is what it is. And so often that is taken as such a negative term.
Yeah.
But what if we ascribed no positive or negative to that and really lived into it is what it is, and what is happening is not personal.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. For example, if you are the victim of violence, or you are in a really challenging relationship and there are harsh words said, or maybe, just life circumstances. We all know what they are. I just recently was talking to someone who was the victim of fraud in their bank account. And, there's all kinds of emotions that come up in that space. And what I got to do was to sit with her and allow her to feel that angry, to feel the sadness, to feel the unexpected of how she was going to actually resolve it, but then to help her bridge the gap in that space, that this wasn't personal. This wasn't about you. This isn't about the identity of who you are. And how you show up in this moment of realization after the fact has more to do with who you are and how things will unfold in the future.
And we have a choice there. The free will. We have the choice, the decision. We can make the decision. But first, it's that awareness, right?
Yep.
That awareness, and that's something that, oh man, even if you know, like I was saying earlier, it's like even if you know that that's the case, it can be so hard to gather that self-awareness to really step into that. And so it's really good. I think even if you're just hearing this for the first time, just knowing that information puts you on the path of kind of waking up to that, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to hear these things and not just like brush them off. And even if it's too big of a concept for to wrap your head around, you need to hear it so that your brain can start processing it. Your mind, your soul, your spirit, you can start like processing that.
There will be a moment when the idea comes back and says, oh, there's a little bit more clarity in that now. But as you said, that awareness of hearing it for the first time or the 18th time, and it doesn't matter whether it's the first or the 18th time, it's learning, it's the self-discipline practice, especially in a moment of challenge, of showing up the best you are able and recognizing that the things that are happening, you get to choose whether you respond or you react. And reaction usually comes from a place of unpreparedness. We react. We talk about hair trigger reactions. When we respond, response shows growth, because in order to respond, we just have to take a beat. We take a breath. We process what we're able to in the moment, and then we begin to move forward. But response always requires that pause, and that pause is the result of self-discipline.
Could it be said like that reacting is unconscious repetition?
Yeah.
And responding is conscious repetition.
Absolutely.
To respond, I need to consciously know how I want to react to this. And it's got to be repetitive that I put the pause in. But if it's unconscious repetition, then it's like, well, this is just naturally what's going to happen. Our flesh, right? Our fallen selves will just react to things. Completely.
And here's the thing. Some people will say, and I can hear the question right now from people who are listening, well, if I've never been in that situation before, how am I going to know how to respond versus react?
Yeah.
And it's not about how you respond. It's about who you know yourself to be in that moment that will then tell you the next steps towards response. Because we are not unthinking, uncompassionate, unkind beings. None of us are. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to be a jerk today, and works their entire day to live out that
that identity.
Like, we all are absolutely, without exception, doing the best we can in the moment. And so when we can recognize that moment of taking that breath, being conscious of what's going on, and choosing how to respond, is that we're not necessarily going to know how to respond, but we're going to know from what place, from which we respond. And it's that place of consciousness, that place of a better known of identity versus ego. And our identity is a big part of that conversation.
Yeah, and the intentionality of that. A good example of that for me. By the way, I'm going to introduce you here in a minute, but we're just whatever. And so a good example of that for me was like I always had a rocky relationship with my stepmom, and I would always show up in a defensive, my hands are out, kind of guarding me kind of way.
Yeah.
And through some stuff that went on in my life, and so this was my mentor, right? Also, my mentor, who's very wise, 86-year-old guy. He just has an amazing identity. And he would always say to me, everything's a blessing depending on how you look at it. So where's the blessing? So I'd talk about like these things that I struggled with, and he's like, where's the blessing? And he would tell me these things over and over and over again. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, it didn't make any sense to me, right?
It wasn't a blessing at all. I was there. Ask me, I'll tell you. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it clicked for me one day when I was going up to my dad's house, and I was intentional of like, okay, I'm going to show up differently. And I had been going through just spiritual transformation, and God had been working on my heart, and I had taken this blessing thing seriously. I was like, okay, so if it's a blessing, what is the opportunity? The opportunity was for me to show up differently with her than I ever showed up before. So I showed up and I helped her wash the dishes after dinner, gave her a hug when I came in the door. It was really just intentional and seeing how she was and talking to her instead of avoiding her. And it changed the dynamic of that night. And I was like, oh, wow. Because I showed up differently, she showed up differently. The whole situation was different because I was perceiving it different. She was still, and I look back, I'm like, she was still doing the same thing she was doing before, but I was reacting to them differently. And it made the whole situation, I looked at it and I saw opportunity instead of avoidance,
Right. Well, and there's no justifying in a place where we show up consciously. We don't need to justify. Yeah. Well, I am this way because they were that way, and they are always that way. And when we walk into any relationship or any conversation with the expectation of how it's going to go based on what's the phrase, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Mm-hmm. Well, what if I decide in that moment for that moment to be different? Yeah. And how I show up and take accountability for that can shift things immensely. I mean, and it's not just relationships like that, it's complete strangers. Mm-hmm. I used to just totally unload on customer service reps on the phone and felt completely justified in doing so. I called you to do a job and you can't seem to be doing that job. When I learned to show up to those calls, recognizing that there was another me on the end of that call that may be in the middle of the biggest challenge of their life at home, and yet they're there at work because there's the expectation of earning a wage so that they can put a roof over their head, regardless of the personal challenges at home. Yeah. And how I know how things like that weigh on me. And so when I can look outside of taking things personally and recognize that other individual is no different than me, mm-hmm. all the while being a unique expression of God. Thank God for the uniqueness. But I've been in those places. So instead of just assuming that they're going to fix it, they're going to fix it fast. And when they don't do that, my expectations are let down. Guess what, my friends? That's called entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
We are called into community. We are called into relationship. We are called into conversations, not for agenda or solutions, but to show love.
Yeah.
And to love the best way we're able, regardless of the outcome.
Yeah.
You said something earlier a few moments ago about this idea of free will. And I've been doing a lot of work in this idea of free will. Like, what is it? Like, I believe that God is, period. I don't believe that it's, and I also don't believe that there's really a choice to follow God or not follow God.
Mm-hmm.
So if I believe that, then what is God? Well, if God is love, oh, I can do that. I can understand that God is love, but then how do I understand the myriad of ways that I show up, let alone the myriad of ways that other people in the world show up? And what I'm really toying with, Rob, is this idea that free will isn't do we believe or not? It's our skill level in love.
Mm.
Because if I believe that we all are good people, and I do, that our intention is to do the best at any moment that we're able, that when I show up really poorly, it's because my skill level in love in that space needed a lot of improvement.
Yeah.
And there are other areas of my life where that skill is, that muscle has been tried and trued. It has been exercised, and I can show up in that moment with love.
Mm.
And so that free will is that skill level. Are we skilled in love in this moment, or are we unskilled in how we're doing it?
So if I'm hearing you right, it's like free will. Like there's love in the absence of love. It's like a spectrum, right? Of love, all of the love, which would be God, and then none of it, which would be. I mean, if you wanted to biblically, that would be the enemy. That would be the devil. That would be hell, right? Total absence of God, which would be absence of love. And so free will is not choosing. Okay, so free will is just, are you loving or not? And the level of love that you can access or that you have available determines which direction you're going to go. I don't know if that made any sense, but it kind of makes sense to me.
It does. And see, what that does is that brings in this idea of borrowed beliefs. And a borrowed belief is something that we receive from our parents, our grandparents, our pastors, our managers, our professors, our teachers, our coworkers, our friends. Those borrowed beliefs are beliefs that we hold on to because they have served a rightful purpose in a moment. Mm-hmm. A borrowed belief may be that girls are supposed to act a certain way because they're girls. Yeah. Boys are supposed to act. Girls aren't supposed to ride dirt bikes. Let's just use that as an example. And boys aren't supposed to play with kitchen things. That there's a time in our country where that was a very natural, normal belief pattern that was shared. Mm-hmm. And while it served a purpose, because everything that happens has a purpose. We may not understand it right now. We may not understand it ever, but it's happening. And so therefore, there's a reason for that. As we grow in our own understanding of our relationship with God, and we recognize that God really doesn't care whether a girl rides a dirt bike or not. Right. God really doesn't care if my son plays with kitchen items on a Tuesday night or not. Mm-hmm. When we set down those borrowed beliefs that things should be a certain way, we actually open up to the divine. We actually open up to that guidance from God. And in those moments, what happens is that our skill level at love is increasing, it's growing, it's evolving, because we're understanding our relationship to God differently. And everything, I absolutely believe that absolutely everything that happens on any given day is part of my relationship with God. And how am I going to show up in that space?
Yeah, I would agree. I would totally agree with that. Okay. let's pause here for a second because
Yes.
we're halfway through the episode and I haven't even done the introduction yet, which is the first time that's happened. So this is the Unstuck movement, right? So people come on this platform who have had true testimonies of breakthrough. So I can give you, the viewer, the listener, the watcher, an example it's possible for you. We're sponsored by the Unstuck. We're sponsored by the Connected Leaders Academy. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com and also the Pro Podcaster Academy. So if you're somebody who wants to launch your own platform, start your own podcast, or you have one, but you want to streamline it, you want to monetize it, I would love to help you with that. You can do that at robzwentz.com. Join the waitlist for the Pro Podcaster Academy. Babs with us today, AmiLynne Carroll guides seekers beyond struggles into divine flow. A TEDx speaker and LifeCharter creator, she inspires healing and awakening. So we have to take a commercial break real quick, right? Because we've talked so much. When we come back, though, let's get into your story.
Fantastic.
Okay? Because I want to dive into what led you to where you are today. We'll do that in 1 minute. Are you struggling to make consistent, valuable content for yourself? Do you want to have an efficient and effective way to create content that attracts the people that you want to connect with in life, the people you want to build relationships with in business? Do you want to be the go-to authority at what you do, at what you're great at? Would it be helpful for you if you had a platform that connects you to incredible people in your industry? The kind of platform that gets you leads and lands you clients without you having to beat down anybody's door or blow up anybody's inbox. Whether you're already creating content or you're desiring to start and it's something that's been kind of burning inside of you for a while, I urge you and encourage you to check out the Pro Podcaster Academy. Get started right now. Join the waitlist at robzwentz.com.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world globally. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, join the Connected Leaders Academy today. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So Babs, let's dive into it. This journey for you, where has it taken you throughout your life and the ups and downs?
Well, I think like so many of your listeners, I strove for many years to do what was expected of me. And I excelled at that because I had expectations from my father. My father was a Marine Corps drill instructor, and I'm one of 15 kids. So you know your place and you do what you're told. You do what you do because you're told to do it, and the consequences of not were dire. So I learned how to follow someone's direction, someone's instructions. And I also learned, unfortunately, that if I did that, that life would be good. Life would bring for me what I deserved. Mm-hmm. Here's where the disconnect happens, is that when you're valedictorian of your class and nobody really cares after your first job where you graduated in your class, when you graduate college, you know, at 14, I was a Mensa member. So my academics were really important to me. And for the longest time, they were my identity because that's what carried me through this world. Mm-hmm. When you begin to build that career and it starts to crumble down, when you have a relationship and they're taken from you, when you're doing all the things that you were supposed to do, I was following the rules. I was a healthy eater. I was a vegetarian. I was running marathons when I was first diagnosed with cancer. Like, are you kidding me? I'm doing all of the things, Rob, that I'm supposed to do in order to have a good life. And at every turn, I felt like I was just smacked between the eyes with challenge. And so ultimately where that brought me to was this point where I was given the opportunity, the invitation to begin questioning. And I have to admit, when I first started asking questions, I was doing it from a place of rebellion. Well, how come? Why? How come? What, like the 2-year-old that's just, experiencing the world for the first time. Yeah. And then as that began to soften and I began to really understand the purpose of my questioning, I'm just going to take you back to 2007. Early 2007, I was participating in an experimental program at the Mayo Clinic for brain cancer. And my doctor called me in and he said to me, AmiLynne, I need you to go home and get your things in order. We really don't expect you to make it 6 weeks. 6 weeks. And I did what most people do. I went home and I cried like a baby. I was angry as the day is long. Are you kidding me? I've been a rule follower. I have ticked off every level of accomplishment in this human experience that was asked of me. How could God possibly be letting this happen to me? And I woke up on the third day, and for the longest time, when I told this story, I didn't recognize the importance of that third day. And yet now, when I share it, I do recognize the symbolism in waking up on that third day and just having this clarity in my thought. That was his opinion. When you talk to a doctor, they give you a prognosis based on their opinion. And that's what it's called. Even in the legal field, when they write a brief, they're writing an opinion. And so it's like, if I want to categorize that and see it for what it is, it's his opinion. But who really knows what's going on in my life and what is meant for me? And I'd grown up in a really rigid Christian household to the point where we were taught predestination. And oh, by the way, in that predestination story, you're not going to heaven because you're not one of the chosen one. But you need to act as if you do. And please don't ask me questions about that, because asking questions is actually questioning authority. And that's dishonoring. And that is not how children are supposed to act. So there was this tangled web that I got the invitation to begin finding my way through. I read every spiritual text I could find. The Christian Bible, the Jewish Torah, I read the Quran, I read the Vedas, I read the Bhagavad Gita. And what I began to hear universally is that God is love. The other message that I received is that we, each of us, Rob, you, me, our listeners, we are made in the perfect image and likeness of God. And regardless of what spiritual text you're reading, there is a component of that proclamation in the image and likeness of God, and God is perfect, whole, and complete, right? Yeah. So if I am made in the perfect image of likeness of God, perfect, whole, and complete, then what gives? Well, what gives was my understanding of who God was and who I am. And what I began to realize is that there were a lot of things that I had misunderstood about my purpose here in this world. And I had, again, all the acclamations I could have. Not only was I empty inside at the end of the day because everybody else went home being served, I didn't. But I had no idea who I was or what made me happy. And so I began to ask those questions from a place of curiosity, as if I'd never been there before, a place of discovery, as if I'd never been there before. I met my husband, my now husband, during that season of my life. And he is the one who really introduced me to this idea of made in the image and likeness of God. And God doesn't make garbage. God also doesn't put in front of us obstacles to test us to see if we deserve his love. The world happens. This human experience happens. And that's part of I now think of life as a laboratory. And as we were saying earlier, I get to choose how I'm going to show up in that space. But what gives me the foundation to decide how I'm going to show up in those spaces of challenge comes from this clear understanding, not of who I am, but of what I am. And what I am is a beloved daughter of Christ, a beloved daughter of God. And I'm not going to go through anything alone. And not only is everything that happens, does it not only contain a lesson, but a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And what I began to realize is in those moments, I got to decide if I was going to be a student in a moment of challenge, or am I going to be a teacher? Because we are all students and we are all teachers. But we have to wake up to that moment of recognizing that we, while in the middle of an invitation, not a challenge, an invitation, we get to see the blessing and we get to see the lesson. And guess what? If I'm going to walk through that invitation, that challenge with my eyes closed, it's going to keep showing up.
Yeah.
It's going to keep showing up.
Oh my gosh. You know, it's like coming to that place of being able to in the moment see the blessings that are happening, to see the moment, to see the situation for what it is. And I, you know, it just, as we're talking, and this is just incredible. There's not many, there's not enough time left to ask all the millions of questions. Right. So I would need to have you on for a second episode. So we got to go deeper into this, but I just think of every day, if anybody's like me, I can be rather agitated by by stupid things. And I see just recently, we have a dog, and it's my wife's dog. We got married and it became my dog too, and he gets on my nerves all the time. And it's such a like opportunity for me. It's like God constantly using this little scruffy dog, his name's Tug, to help me to learn how to love better. Because I've always had I've never had so many people just like love dogs. They love dogs more than people. I never have had that love for dogs. And so it's God like kind of poking me. Like you said, he's not testing me to see, if he loves me or not, but it's just like, he's just showing me like, hey, here's an area of your life where you need to love more and you're failing at it every day. Not that he, you know what I mean, but it's like it's highlighted to me all the time. Like, Rob, why is this happening on repeat? And like you said, it's like this. It'll keep showing up if you don't notice it and recognize it and step into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that happens throughout our day is one of two things. We are either looking for love or giving love. We are either requesting love or we are sharing love. And man, our skill level at requesting love sometimes can be really harsh. But that's what it is. It's actually a request for love. And so when we can see that from our own place, then when someone is less than cordial with us in the way they approach us, we can be reminded that, look, that person is asking for love. They are doing it in a way that makes my toes curl. But all it is an ask for love. It's a request for love. And what do I get to do in that moment? I get to decide if I respond with love or I react by mirroring their request for love.
Boy, that's a wild way of looking at it. Everybody is how they're showing what they don't realize it, but they're requesting love, and you have to. Wow, I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
It's for me, it was that starting point of calling myself to account in the moment for how I was going to show up. Because for me, I'm a bridge builder. Look, I don't get an idea. I'm not one of those people that, God opens this great revelation and all of a sudden it is. I'm a hard learner, apparently. Yeah. I've got to build a bridge to it. And it's like, how do I get from where I'm at, feeling put upon, feeling wounded or hurt by people, by circumstances? How do I get from there to it not being personal? Well, when I recognize that it takes two on either side, whether it's two circumstances, two people, two voices in a dialogue, and if I can see that everything that's happening is either a request or an expression of love, well, guess what? If what's coming at me feels harsh, I can see that as a request for love. because love doesn't hurt. God's ideas don't hurt God's ideas. It's just as a simple fact, because God is love. And so am I being the best expression of love I can be? Well, I get to call myself to account when my request is for love. Can I at least find a way to do that in a softer way? Because anger is not an absence of love. It's a misunderstanding of it.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. So you had, just so I understand this correctly, you had stage 4 cancer, and that caused the stroke that led you to be a quadriplegic, right? Do I have that right?
That's the short and condensed version from 2007. I actually had a wonderful healing and had a good 5 years of the most healthy living I had as an adult. And in 2016, the headaches began again, and the physical began to go down. I lost partial use of my body, so I was a paraplegic. And then in October of 2022, I had a stroke. And I spent some time in that suspended consciousness. And I will tell you, for those of you who question about like near-death experiences or what that moment feels like, for me, my experience of that was there were no decisions to make, because it's not a near-death experience. It's actually a fuller life experience. We just can't grasp that concept until we've experienced it. And we don't have the words. And so look, from a physical perspective, the body is dying or has died. And yet our consciousness is who we are, our consciousness, that Christ consciousness that lives through us. And so in that space of moving from a place where I was a AAA personality, like if it was going to be, it was up to me. And yes, there was a right way, my way, or the wrong way, your way to do something if it wasn't my way. And so you wake up from this stroke to find yourself not only not independent, but with essentially no autonomy or individuality, and that absolutely everything you need from a physical perspective has to be given to you by someone else.
Yeah.
And I got to decide if I was going to be angry. Was I going to ask for love? Or was I going to operate from a place of grace? Was I going to allow what was unfolding in my life to be an expression of love for others?
How long did it take you to get to that place? Because I imagine that wasn't the instant reaction.
Oh, no. It was not instant. It was, look, I still have moments. Yesterday, I got so frustrated that I actually dissolved into tears. And I allowed myself to feel that feeling and to live through that feeling so that I could be done with it and begin again. And so, look, it's not like that feeling of anger ever goes away, because there is an egoic part of us. We are celestial beings having a human experience, and part of the human experience is the ego, and the ego is there to tell you that you are entitled to certain things and that things should look a certain way. And because you are a rule follower, all of those things that society would tell you, your ego is there reinforcing. But what God says is, in the dwelling of love, I am whole. And in wholeness, we don't lack. In wholeness, we don't need.
Yeah.
And so if I can reside in that place of love more than I can a place of the ego, then it's a good day.
Amen to that. Yeah,
It's a good day.
That's for sure. So we have to wrap this episode up, but I feel like we barely even scratched the surface of, practical things to apply to people's lives who are watching and listening. We could talk so much deeper on that, right? On what you do and how you help people. So if you're open to it, I'd love to have you back on at a future date.
Absolutely. Consider it done.
All right. That was easy. If they want to check out more about you, they can obviously go to your website, which is AmiLynneCarroll.com. That's AmiLynneCarroll.com. All of that information is in the show notes. But also, you have an ultimate 2-day event to uncover your life's purpose. And that is also in the show notes. If you're watching, you can see it on the screen right now. What can they expect if they go to that link?
You go to that link and sign up for, we call it an incubator, LifeCharter incubator. It is 2 days. It is usually the first Monday and Tuesday of each month. And it is 6 hours where someone gets to pour into you. Come as you are. It's a safe place. And ultimately what we're doing is we're beginning to build a framework whereby which we're understanding our identity better. We're understanding our purpose better. And we're gaining clarity on why we're here and why we're called to what we're doing. And we actually create a blueprint, a life charter, 12 dimensions of our life, so that no matter what comes up, we can throw that against our life charter, and it makes making those choices easier as we move forward.
Amazing. I love that. Okay. So if you want to be the authority in your space, go to robzwentz.com. You can start your own platform and level up there. This has been a wonderful, wonderful episode. Babs, thank you for coming on. Thank you for doing what you do. I mean, I know you do a lot of podcasts. You've been spreading this message for a while. And so I just feel blessed that I got a chance to cross paths with you and have you share this. Number one, mostly just for me today, I'm valuing it so much, but for everybody else who's listening and watching, I know it's been incredibly valuable. But these sort of messages, these are the kind of things that I absolutely love to talk about, think about, chew on, and just, like I said, you need to hear this stuff. It might not make sense to you right now, but you need to hear it, because something's going to show up later on in life, and you're going to come back to hearing these things, and it's going to click a little bit more. Not going to say you're fully going to embrace it, right? Because I know for me, it's been at least a decade now of hearing these things, understand, and going through different levels of understanding. And it's so valuable.
Absolutely. It's the hearing it so that ultimately you can understand it, but recognizing you're never going to understand it until you experience it. Mm-hmm. And maybe we can talk more about that on our second shared time together.
Oh, exciting. There we go. Cliffhanger. Way to go. You're good at this. All right. Until next time, another true testimony of breakthrough. This has been the Unstuck Movement.